Well, following the ministerial briefing, we cross over to my colleague Arabile Gumede, who was observing proceedings. Arabile, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nompo. Look, it certainly does tell you the lay of the land, right? Things are difficult. There's so many minute issues that also need to be ironed out, need to be sorted. Economically, the question, though, is where will the money come from? If South Africa continues to have had such a tight budget to try and fill in all these fiscal measures before COVID-19, what happens in a time like this as well, then, where we need to find a solution? I'm joined then by the Director General of National Treasury, that's Dondo Mokgajane, who joins us here. Dondo, thank you so much for the time. Let's talk about where the money will come from in a situation like this.
Look, the money is there. The money is in the budget. The money is in the system. It's through reprioritization. You heard the Minister of Tourism saying that they'll make 200 million available. This is from existing monies and resources where we are approving virements from other programs to specific COVID-19 related programs. And that's working. Same with the 150 million rand that Minister Patel was talking about of seed funding for the Solidarity Fund. He did indicate that we'll be putting 100 million from Treasury. Effectively, it's again looking at budgets, slicing off some budgets that are clearly not going to be spent. I can tell you now as an example, if you look at what's going to happen on the travel budgets across the departments, in national departments we have about, on average, on a monthly basis, spend about 280 million. That 280 million won't be spent for domestic and international travel. So effectively, that means that money will have to be reprioritized. So that 100 million, for instance, is coming from such programs. And as he said, the 50 million is coming from the lottery. So there is money in the system currently that's not going to be, and we are reprioritizing to specific COVID-19 programs.
Some might say, however, that there aren't specific fiscal measures that are put in place. And that will be my question number one with this one. But linked to that, you had said over here that, fiscal measures alone cannot solve the situation. The Reserve Bank goes on to say monetary policy alone cannot solve the situation. Who is going to help us solve it then?
No, look, this is hands on deck for everybody. I mean, I'm saying that because if you look at, for instance, the Solidarity Fund, and already we've got, 2 billion, 115 there already. I think one option is that let's all South Africans contribute there and find ways of actually making this kitty bigger, because it's obviously going to help in terms of alleviating the impact. Secondly, yes, we said fiscal policy and monetary policy only cannot. A combination of interventions is necessary. We may not have come out very clear in terms of fiscal measures. But look, it's not. Don't underestimate what you indicated. The tax break as a result of the employment tax incentive provisions, that's enough. It's actually a lot to actually make sure that small business in particular can ease the impact of this. Secondly, I think payment deferrals. It's not also a small thing, whereby we're easing the pressure currently, because at some point will kick in. Some newspaper was saying today that the bazooka has not been used as yet. Yes, you didn't hear me mentioning anything about what's in the contingency reserve. You didn't hear me mentioning anything about any other measures of monies that we can access, as Minister said yesterday, including money that we can access from the multilateral development banks. The World Bank, for instance, have said there's $50 million available now.
So are you considering the World Bank and the like?
They are there. They are there. These are options that are there. The NDB, for instance, there's a $1 billion amount that we could access. All we're saying is that the impact is not yet known of the COVID-19. We are assessing it very closely. As I said, we are closely watching the performance of the economy. If need be, but obviously that will come with further breaking the expenditure ceilings that are there. These should be monies that, when need be, will access. But currently we are considering, obviously we know the access, we know the conditions and the processes. We want to be ready in case you are going to need that. But currently we are not. Currently we are saying there's money in the system, and we can reprioritize and focus into these interventions that are critical.
Yeah. What is perhaps your limit, if I can call it that, as National Treasury, in terms of the funding that may be needed? Would you say 100 billion is a figure that you're perhaps hoping you don't have to surpass at some stage?
Look, currently it's not about the figures. As I said, the impact is very early days to talk about whether the target is 100 billion rands or not. I wouldn't want to venture into that because we have not as yet assessed the full impact of COVID-19. All I can say is that currently for interventions that are critical, for instance, we have eased procurement regulations in order for people to access quickly and speedily what's needed. And as this goes on, as we understand fully the impact, and the epidemiological projections are made and the modeling is made, we'll then have an idea as to what kind of impact are we talking about. And in that way, we'll obviously look at further fiscal measures that we could put on the table for consideration by government to employ.
Yeah. Very quickly as well, would you say that perhaps the budget 2020 that was announced last month may need to be thrown out the window in some aspects because of how difficult this scenario is and where spending might go?
Look, that's the reality here. The fiscal framework is obviously we have to relook at the fiscal framework. And as I said, if you had me earlier on, I said it's important that currently we use violent processes and procedures that are provided for as per the Public Finance Management Act. And if need be, the fiscal framework, which unfortunately we can only table at the MTBPS, including new growth numbers, there's anything between -2% and -2.7% that many analysts out there are saying the impact is going to be. But however, for now, we will obviously have to reconsider the framework as it is currently and only announce the new framework around the MTBPS.
You did say that the growth figure you can only talk about, of course, primarily at the MTBPS, but would you assess that that would go into negative?
Look, it's early days, but look, depending on the impact, one can say we could go there. But look, at the same time, Arabile, it's important that we also consider, let's not forget, in the midst of all of the challenges around COVID-19, let's not forget the structural measures that we need to implement and also do at the same time. So it's important so that we are able to ease the pressure that comes as a result of COVID-19.
Dondo, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. We'll exercise some social distancing and I won't shake your hand in this one. But thank you so much for the time. Really, really appreciate it there. The Director General of National Treasury, Dondo Mokgajane, really offering perhaps some sentiment, some thought around just what needs to be done at a time like this. Can National Treasury afford it? Perhaps not. How much money is there in the kitty? Not necessarily saying just how much, but really emphasizing just how critical it will be to find the exact economic impact. Growth might certainly go into negative territory, and that tells you just how difficult it is. Nompu, yesterday as the president was speaking, we of course made note of just the words he was putting out there, and one of the key elements here is how we should not panic. And hopefully we could just bring up one of the graphs. Really, a lot of this really comes from what the government, the president was speaking about yesterday. The likes of the supermarkets will continue to be open. Banks and essential services like that will continue to be open. There is no need then for South Africans to think that they need to panic buy in any item and at any time really in future. So it really is telling that South Africans need to focus on perhaps doing what is necessary in an economy like our very own. Very quickly as well, what is the economic response? You may feel like there may not have necessarily been a fiscal measure put in place, but as I spoke to Dondo Mokgajane here, he did make note that South Africa's economic response is really the measures that have been put forward there. You do have the fund, of course, coming online. Around 2 billion being offered by South Africa's richest families there as well, the Rupert and Oppenheimer families, really offering 2 billion in total as well. The 150 that goes into the fund as well as a seed contribution to begin with from government. And as you can see there, the total around 13.85 billion does tell you that that is just a starting point. The president even yesterday did say that it is only a plan A or part A of the entire scenario. The other measures as well, of course, last week we saw that 100 basis point cut. Nompo, it certainly gets very, very interesting as one continues to look into just the impact of COVID-19 across not just South Africa's economy, but certainly the globe.
Thanks very much, Arabile, for that. And we'll speak to you, no doubt, further later in the day. My colleague there, Arabile Gumede. Health Minister Zweli